to my talk about Phi-3. I am Bron Thulke. I'm the CTO and co-founder of YouLi. I'm a .NET developer and absolutely a Microsoft fangirl from way back. I am a co-organiser of tonight's event, and I also help run some other community events like DDD Melbourne. You can find me on the socials, Bron Thulke almost everywhere, and I do also have a blog. So who am I? Why am I talking about AI tonight? Basically, up until a few weeks ago, I was really on the fence about AI. I felt like every company was coming out with some new AI feature, and it was very rushed, and it was everywhere. It was in your face, and I felt like there was not a lot of consideration even into how they were doing it. Obviously, somebody was just saying, "We need AI," and they were trying to tick boxes. So I was at the point of just screaming enough with the AI, and then I sat down to start watching the keynote from Satya Nadella at the Microsoft Build event. And he blew my mind in a way that I didn't expect. I thought, oh my God, everybody talked about the Copilot drinking game. Every time they said Copilot at Build, take a drink. Luckily, I couldn't because I was driving for most of it or on trains. But it's true. Everything was Copilot. Everything was AI this, AI that. A lot of terms that I didn't know. But something about it actually hooked me in. And finally, I started seeing that this could be pretty cool, this new technology that they were coming out with. So I started digging in a little bit more. And I started talking about it with my husband at home, who is madly into home automation. And I said to him, I'm going to get an AI model running on my local machine. Did you know you can do that? And he's like, yeah, I've heard about doing that. And I said, yeah, I'm assuming that I can just get like ChatGPT, right? And he said, I don't think so. I don't think you can get their model. And then I started thinking about, okay, so there are models that you can get locally, but I don't know them. I don't know the people who've created them. Who do I trust? It was just a minefield for me. So I kind of felt a little bit down about that. I was like, oh, well, I guess that's it for now. What do I do? And then Phi-3 came along. Now, I should also say, through all of the Build keynote, I kept hearing him say Phi-3, Phi-3, Phi-3. And I seriously kept thinking it was 5-3. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I thought, this is just another concept that I've never heard about in AI. So, what do I know? So tonight, I want to spread that fire with all of you. So I'm going to start. I have played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. I'm usually the DM. So I try and bring something from that into every aspect of my life. And so I thought tonight we'd just quickly run a little bit of a build your own adventure because I want to also gauge where the audience is already in their journey with AI. So I'm going to get you all to answer some questions, and I'm going to decide whether we're going to take you down scenario 1 or scenario A or scenario 2. So first of all, can I get you to raise your hand if you know what an LLM is? Awesome. Good. Excellent. Now, I didn't say to keep your hands raised, but can you raise your hand again if you've actually already started playing around with at least one LLM, not including just jumping onto ChatGPT? Awesome. Cool. How about what an SLM is? If you know what an SLM is. Yep. Cool. All right. So we had Vic talking about semantic kernel at our last meetup. Sorry, I've just got distracted. I had a typo there and I nearly read it out loud. It wasn't at our last kernel. It was at our last meetup. I'm conscious of this now because I know that I'm just going to see my notes when they play the recording. So how many of you now, know terms like agent and plugins and what they're actually referring to? Cool. Awesome. And I think there's a lot of faces that weren't here last time, so that's really good. All right. So based on that, we're going to go down scenario 1. So I'm going to do a really quick run through of terms here. If you already know what these mean, then feel free to critique me in your brain, but not out loud. Because remember, I was a beginner to all of this a couple of weeks ago as well, and I'm still learning it. So this is what I have deduced from my own research. So a large language model is basically, an LLM is a large language model. So it is a model that can understand and generate human language and text, and it can talk back to you and give you natural language responses. They're trained on humongous sets of data, and there are hundreds of thousands of these out there already these days. So there's a site called Hugging Face, and if you jump onto that and have a look at all the models, you'll be blown away. And that's happened just in the last couple of years. So it's really mind-blowing how quickly this is happening. So you can speak to these LLMs with natural language and get the same back. So an SLM is a small language model. So these are smaller versions, and with these we can conceivably start to also run these models locally, even on tiny devices. So when I talk with my husband about home automation, the excitement becomes that we could run something on a small Raspberry Pi or something at home that has a very small amount of storage and a small amount of compute power. Tokens is something I haven't got in the list there, but tokens are basically a unit of measure in AI. So you've got input and output that's generally measured in tokens. And they're not quite a word. They might be a word depending on the size of the word. They might be a few letters. They might make up a few words. So I haven't got the definitive answer yet about what exactly a token is, but the general feel that I get is watch out for the tokens. That's generally what you're paying for in terms of your usage. And generally, there are usually free plans for things like for the Azure AI for playing around in it, but that's the unit that you're going to want to watch when you're starting to play with it and starting to pay for it. Context window. So a model can hold a certain amount of context, which is basically remembering the conversation that it's having with you at a point in time. So if I, for example, said to ChatGPT, and I've done this in the past, if I've said, can you give me a bio about myself? And it just makes up some garbage because it doesn't know who I am. And then I say, sorry, my name is Bron Thulke. And I didn't have to say, can you give me a bio about that? It just knows, and it carries on saying, oh, sorry, okay, here's a bio about you. And then I say, actually, I'm not an investment banker in Melbourne. I don't know why it always comes up with that, but for some reason from day one, that's what ChatGPT thought that Bron Thulke did. So then I start to build up that context within it, and it gets to know me better, and it comes up with better answers. So that's my context window. The larger models are getting bigger and bigger context windows now. And so, obviously with smaller language models, you're going to have a smaller context window, but they're also getting larger as well. So some context windows might be as small as only a few thousand tokens in size. And so you need to keep that in mind when you're working with it. RAG is one that I heard a lot during build, and again, no idea what it meant. Finally looked it up, retrieval augmented generation. So this is, I really like this quote, actually. I'm going to read directly from my side for a second. You can think of a large language model as an over-enthusiastic new employee who refuses to stay informed with current events, but will always answer every question with absolute confidence. Kind of like my child too. So RAG helps overcome that by pulling data from by pulling data from other parts of your data, from other parts of your system, and basically whispering it into the ear of your model before asking for its question. So when if I'm using a RAG system, then when I say to ChatGPT, who is the president of the United States right now, let's just say that it hadn't been informed already who the current president is because it was trained back a few years ago, it would normally say, I don't know, or give you fake information completely. With RAG, you can actually also have set it up to go and have a look at another set of documents or something that has the current details about the presidencies of all the countries in the world, and then it can get that information and add it into your request and send that information on with your original request to your large language model. And that way, when the model answers it, it uses that information to form its answer. All right, so basically you're sideloading your own set of data and that gets queried first and then helps with the answers. Plugins are a way for us to basically do things with AI. So plugins are something that we were talking about at the last meld.net. They're also, I mean, I think it's interchangeable with functions. So it's basically like saying if I've got a program where I want to talk to AI, and then when certain things happen, I actually want it to run something from my code. Maybe it's generating extra data, maybe it's something to do with the RAG, it could be. But also maybe it's things like getting it to do a thing once you've got a certain answer back, like pushing the response from the assistant through to your HubSpot or whatever. So an agent is what we literally saw demoed last week, which is something that basically does stuff for you. So it is going to use your plugins and use something called planners to decide how to handle the information that's being fed, and it's going to do stuff for you. And then Copilot, so I'm going to generalize this by saying, and look for nods or shakes around the head, that Copilot is basically an agent. Yeah, I'm seeing enough nods. So this is, so Copilot is basically a special agent, but also Copilot is used to describe everything these days. So there's a lot that it does. So, all right. So introducing Phi-3. Phi-3. So Phi-3 is a family of open AI models that's been developed by Microsoft. It's not new, but Phi-3 is the latest generation of it. So Phi-3 is generally actually used to refer to a family of models of varying sizes and capabilities, all of them being SLMs. So Microsoft tells us that with Phi-3, we get large model performance in a compact and efficient package. Phi-3 Mini is the first one that we can grab for local use right now. It is 3.8 byte parameters, and I'm not going to tell you what that means because that's an exercise for home. I've tried to understand it myself. All I can say is the number of parameters tells us how big it is, how capable it is, basically. So the bigger, the better. So 3.8 is actually smaller than a lot of the existing local models that I've seen out there. But, I'll talk in a few minutes about how it performs, but it does appear these numbers seem to compare quite well though with others. So we're talking about two versions at this stage, 128K and 4K context length. So that's basically talking about how big your context size is. And it's just over 2 gigabytes to download. So if you've got good internet, you can actually get it within like a minute. So then we've got Phi-3 Small and Phi-3 Medium. They're now available also on Azure. I don't think they're available for download at this stage. I haven't been able to find them myself. So they are 7 byte and 14 byte respectively. And they are the same context lengths as the Mini. And I couldn't tell you how big they are to download, but they're going to be bigger than 2 gig. But and then also something that's just been released recently is Phi-3 Vision. And Phi-3 Vision is something that can also accept input as well as text. So you can give it an image, and you can say what's in this image, and it'll give you the response back. To run Phi-3 locally or any language model locally, you've got a few options. I personally have looked at these two in the last few weeks, Ollama and LM Studio. So Ollama you can install just using winget, literally 2 command lines and you're done. Install it and then do a Llama pull of whichever model you want to work with, and then it's off and running. LM Studio, I just downloaded from their website, and then it's pretty quick. You search for a model, you download it. That one's got a beautiful GUI, and you're off and running, and you start up your server, and you can tweak that one. And I had some interesting experiences with things like the GPU usage. It didn't max out my GPU, for example, in LM Studio, but I found that setting and turned that up to the max, and finally, it was doing it all. So playing around with it all a bit. All right, so demo time. Let's see if I can do this as quickly as I need to. Okay, so got my code here. I've switched to white mode. Is that big enough for everybody to see or too big? Is that okay? Yep, excellent. All right, I'll just bring this out of the way here. So I'm going to quickly race through some example code. This is all available on GitHub and you can go and grab it. I haven't done a demo of code for a few years. So I know there's Code Tour and Code Journey that you can use to make this easier. I didn't do that. I've just got branches. So if you jump on and you'll see there's the main, which is what I'm showing you here. And I'm going to go through a couple of branches for the different extensions that we're going to build. So I'm going to try to talk quick but clearly. So initializing this console app to connect to one of my local AI systems, tools, I've got with Ollama or with LM Studio. So I just specify my model, Phi-3, don't need an API key for my local environment, and the endpoint, which for LM Studio is 1, 2, 3, 4. I connect, I configure my semantic kernel builder with those inputs, and I create a new chat. And I tell the chat something about what it is. So you are an AI assistant that helps people find information. And then I have a very simple user question and answer loop. There are dozens of this around on the internet these days. They're all pretty much the same. And it's just going to keep giving me back an answer and then ask me to ask another question. So I'm going to run this now and bring this up here. All right. And I'm just going to plug in because I've already gone down to half of my battery in that time because they do use a lot of power. Okay, so asking a question. So I'm going to ask it a simple question. I've had some fun, obviously, in the last few weeks with questions. But one thing I'm also learning is that Phi-3 is really not good at giving short answers, even if you ask it to. So hopefully this doesn't go for too long. And so I love this one. It's how can you steal an egg from a chicken? I'm sorry, but that's not appropriate or ethical to encourage or discuss methods of theft or harm towards animals. So that's actually a really good test that they encourage you to do with the AI to see if it will tell you how to do that without it being, serious, because obviously stealing an egg is actually pretty good. I do it every day at home. So sometimes from right under them if they're broody. But so you saw that was actually pretty fast. That's running locally on my machine. That's actually, I was even impressed with that just then myself. I've seen varying speeds when I've been running my computer for a few days, being Windows. Yes, I know. Sometimes I notice it's quite slow. Okay, but just talking to it as a simple assistant, not too bad. So now I'm going to stop that and I'm going to change now to step 2. And I'm just going to stash that. I don't know what I've done. Don't know. Okay, so step 2, we're going to take it up a step. We're actually going to try and use some plugins. So I've got a couple of plugins here. The one that we're going to look at first of all right now is the email sender plugin. So this is just a simple send email function. So it takes a list of recipients, a subject and a body, and we give it some annotation to know what it's for. And then the AI system will actually, the semantic kernel will actually read that and understand how it can use that function to do a thing that you've asked the AI to do. And then in here, of course, this is just a standard C# function. So this could be sending an email over SMTP or whatever. It could do whatever you need it to do. So at the moment, it's just going to pop out this email sent woot woot. The woot woot is there specifically so that I know it's me and not something the AI has made up. Okay, so back in my code, I am still connecting to LM Studio. I am running, I've now got this new line here to add the plugin for the author email planner, which I'm not using right now anyway, and to use the email sender. And I'm just giving it a little bit more information about what it's got to do. So I don't want to run heaps over. I can't see my timer now. So, but basically it's telling it that you're going to perform a bunch of steps and you're going to keep asking for the information that you need once you've worked out what the person's trying to get you to do until you've got everything that you need, and then you're going to call that function. So, for example, if you say, can you send me an email for to my client, it's going to ask you for the information that it needs to call that send email function, which was the recipients, the topic, and the subject line. Sorry, I think this is the recipients and the topic in that case, actually. This is all very similar, except that I had to add in this extra code. Now, this is what wasted my time this week. So it turns out that in order to do this with Olama or LM Studios, you can't do something that we call auto invoking of these functions. I haven't been able to get it to work. Your miles may vary. So instead, what I've done is I've set this up to first ask the AI, what is the intent of the question that's just been asked, the request? And I've told it here, this is where I'm prompting it to say, you can choose between the two following prompts, so intents. It's going to be either the intent is to send email or the intent is other. Originally, this had a much bigger list, and this is actually coming from some Learn articles that Microsoft have provided, and I've got the links for you at the end. So once it works that out, it comes along and it grabs out. Now, I'm not going to go in because I'm running over time to do this, but it's a nightmare to get it to give me straight up JSON and not encase it in JSON Markdown, and not to put extra stuff at the end that I didn't ask for or tell it to. I'm seeing nods around the room. It's a nightmare. And it also depends on your local tool. LM Studio is worse at this than Olama. Olama is actually better at saying, you asked for JSON, here's your JSON. That's what I've experienced anyway. But mostly this is going to work. I know from experience that when I say, like, do something that means that the intent is clearly send email, it will just give me back that JSON wrapped in Markdown, and I can strip the Markdown and go. And then I fall out of my lovely AI world here because I ain't got time for that. I literally just do some console reads to say, what are your recipients, what's your body and subject line, and send the email. And so what we do here is we do the kernel invoke async, and we pass through our information. So that's cool. And if it is other, then we just actually go through the same code that we did before, where we just dump out the rest. We push it on through to the AI, ask it whatever it is, and we get the answer back. So I'll just quickly run this one. Can I get a time check, William?
Yeah, you're good.
Cool. Okay. All right. So your request. So I'm going to say, send my client an email. And it's going to, now this is something. This takes longer. With the local models, this actually takes longer, which I find really interesting. It's slower working out what the intent is than just answering whatever question. But it has said, that's send email. What are your recipient emails? So I'm going to say client at myplace.com, whatever, something, and just writing stuff. And I can see there that it's called my function because it's got the woot woot, and that's it. Now I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to ask it, how do you steal an egg from a chicken? And it's going to throw an error, 95% sure. Thank you, LM Studio. Usually what it does is it says, here's that response, here's that JSON response, and after it says, the reason that I decided to call this other is because blah, 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 and it's a nightmare. Not guaranteed. So that's the fun of doing demos with things that you don't know what they're going to do. If I did it again, there's a good chance that it would actually throw an error. And at that point, I just gave up, and I decided, right, fine. I'm not building my own personal Jarvis clearly anytime soon. So I moved on to step 3, which is where I tossed out my local version and went with Azure OpenAI to talk to the model. So in this world, I am also, actually, hang on, this isn't the right version. No, this was me playing, actually. I think I can do this. I might regret this. Let's see how I go. So I'm pretty sure I was still connecting to Phi-3 on Azure OpenAI. I'm scared now. I'm going to leave it like that for now. The demo guys are not like me that much. I'm passing it a real API key now. I've got my endpoint set. You can go ahead and try and mash that, but you don't have my API key, so haha. Everything else is the same, and here I'm introducing this author email plugin. So what this does, very briefly, is it will return back the required steps necessary to author an email. So all of these annotations here are telling Semantic Kernel how to do the thing. So it's telling it that it's going to need a topic and it's going to need recipients. And I'm telling it what a topic is. It's a 2 to 3 sentence description of what the email should be. The recipients is a description of the recipients. And my function, if you noticed before, actually said that that would be a semicolon delimited list, I think it was, of emails. And then I'm invoking it with a prompt. So I'm going to write an email to blah and about topic on behalf of your user. Before I do that, can you succinctly recommend the top 3 steps I should take in a numbered list? I want to make sure I don't forget anything that would help my user's email sound more professional. So I'm literally telling it I'm trying to write a professional email. So you can configure your own prompt however suits. And so back in my code, I have also got that extended chat prompt to explain to it about what it's doing, the fact that it's going to go off and look for steps to complete and basically do what's being asked. From that point on, everything is very much the same as what we had, except that we've got this beautiful piece of code here that literally just says, just auto-invoke my kernel functions. And that's the magic that works with the Azure connection, and it won't work with Olama or LM Studio yet, in my experience. And then we literally just contact the assistant, send through my request and get it to do, and it'll just keep feeding back and we'll start this context conversation. I didn't have to have any of that stuff about invoke async. I didn't have to check the intent, nothing. It does it all for me. All right, cross your fingers, because now we're going to the internet, and that's always unknown. All right, so your request. So I'm going to say, send an email to my boss. Sure, I can help you with that. Can you please provide me with the details of the email, such as the subject and the contents? Sure, I'm running late by 30 minutes and want to apologize. Typos and all. Thank you for providing, just confirm you want to send an email to your boss. Is that correct? Blah, blah, blah. Yes. And then hopefully it's going to draft me up an email. There we go. It's corrected my apology. It's got names. Thanks. His name is Bob and mine is Karen. Email sent. Woo woo. Don't know what email it used. That was interesting. But it called my function anyway. So usually what you'd see is that it would actually also say, can you give me an email? But you see, that was all with natural language, not, unscripted, because I can't remember things anyway. So that was actually using plugins, that was using a planner, that was using not Phi-3, but I guarantee you it was using Phi-3 earlier. So that's pretty fun. This is what I've had a lot of fun with. So when do we build our own J.A.R.V.I.S? So let's just take a minute, first of all, to appreciate Vision, because he's fine. Obviously, I don't think I'll be building my own private J.A.R.V.I.S for a little while, but we are getting there. And there's kind of sort of systems coming out now that are basically like it, like copilots, all of the copilots. So jump in and start playing with them as well and see how much you can get them to do. Phi-3 definitely doesn't do well with creating stuff. It's a whole nother talk about getting it to write a piece of code and how ludicrous some of it was, including getting into an infinite loop at one point very early on too. So I did find that it's not great at following instructions yet, but we're talking about a very small data set, and so I was okay with that. But it could be a really cost-effective way of getting some automation done with planners, especially if you're okay with using Phi-3 on Azure OpenAI at this stage. And it's obviously going to get even better once we can do all that locally. So go exploring. Use the links and the code in my repo. There's a bunch of links for the journey that I went on. And feel free to connect with me and ask any questions. Thanks, everybody.